You've been taught history. You've learned about ancient Egypt, Rome, and the great empires that shaped our world. You think you know when civilization began. But beneath the waves, far from any textbook, lies a secret older than any king or pharaoh you've ever heard of. A silent testimony to a past deliberately forgotten, or perhaps simply lost to time. So sit back, relax, and let your mind drift with the gentle currents of curiosity. We're about to journey into the unseen depths of the Indian Ocean, a place where history sleeps, waiting for us to awaken its impossible truths. The story we tell ourselves about human history is neat, linear. We moved from simple hunter-gatherers to farmers, then built villages and eventually great cities. This slow climb, we are told, began perhaps 10,000 years ago, after the last great ice age melted away. But what if that story, so carefully constructed, is missing an entire, monumental chapter? What if the true foundations of civilization are not on land, but deep beneath the ocean's surface? Imagine vast, perfectly geometric structures. Colossal walls, precise platforms, and sprawling cityscapes, not carved from mountains, but hidden under miles of water. These are not shipwrecks. They are not natural rock formations. These are megalithic monuments, so ancient, so enormous, they defy every accepted timeline of human achievement. They lie scattered across the floor of the Indian Ocean, silent witnesses to an age we are only just beginning to comprehend. Their very existence challenges the core belief that advanced civilization is a recent phenomenon. Mainstream archaeology, for centuries, has focused on terrestrial sites. We dig through desert sands, climb mountain ruins, and uncover temples buried beneath jungles. The prevailing wisdom has been that early human populations, lacking complex tools or advanced engineering, simply weren't capable of such monumental construction. They certainly weren't building vast cities that would later sink into the abyss. Our timelines for the rise of complex societies place their origins firmly on dry land, long after the Great Melt. But there's a profound problem with this neat, tidy explanation. The ocean, which covers over 70% of our planet, has held its secrets close. Now, with advanced sonar mapping and deep-sea exploration, those secrets are beginning to surface. What we are finding defies common sense. Reports from maritime surveys, oil exploration teams, and even naval intelligence operations have consistently detected anomalies. These aren't just random bumps on the seabed. They are regular, right-angled, impossibly aligned structures, sometimes stretching for miles, at depths that would have been dry land only tens of thousands of years ago, perhaps even earlier. Could these be the remnants of a forgotten epoch? Some researchers believe these submerged monuments are evidence of a global seafaring culture, a sophisticated civilization that existed long before the Sumerians, the Egyptians, or the Indus Valley people. Theories range from an unknown, highly advanced pre-Diluvian society to early humans with a technological grasp far beyond what we currently credit them. What if our ancestors were not primitive, but master builders, capable of feats of engineering that still elude us today? The unsettling question remains. If these structures are indeed artificial, built by human hands when the sea levels were dramatically lower, what else were these forgotten architects capable of? And what kind of cataclysm could have swallowed their entire world? The first glimpses of these underwater mysteries often come through technology designed for other purposes. Sonar, typically used for mapping the seabed, identifying shipping lanes, or searching for oil, has inadvertently become a window into a lost past. The acoustic pulses penetrate the water, bouncing off the seafloor, and return with a detailed picture of what lies beneath. What they sometimes reveal are not the undulating curves of natural geology, but stark, rectilinear patterns. Straight lines, sharp corners, massive platforms, and what appear to be deliberately shaped mounds. When these sonar anomalies are investigated further, sometimes by remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, or even deep-sea divers, the visual evidence is even more astounding. Clear photographs and video footage show meticulously cut stone blocks, stacked precisely, walls that extend for hundreds of meters, roads or pathways leading to monumental structures. These are not naturally occurring features. They bear the unmistakable hallmarks of intelligent design and immense effort. The mainstream scientific community, upon hearing such claims, often offers a cautious, conventional explanation. They suggest these formations are geological curiosities, natural erosions, or perhaps even highly speculative pareidolia. The human tendency to see familiar patterns in random data. They argue that the immense scale and depth would make human construction virtually impossible with known ancient technologies. It's far simpler, they say, to assume nature is playing tricks. But there's a fundamental flaw in this skeptical viewpoint. The sheer volume of these findings, across vast swathes of the Indian Ocean, from the coastlines of India to Madagascar and beyond, makes natural formation highly improbable. These are not isolated instances. Divers describe the stones as being too perfectly cut, too deliberately placed to be accidental. The symmetry, the sheer size of the blocks, some weighing many tons, and their intricate arrangement defy any known natural geological process. Furthermore, some reports speak of carved artifacts, pottery fragments, and even what appear to be tools embedded within these submerged sites. These are not merely patterns, they are architectural remains. So if these are not natural formations, what then? Theories range wildly. Could it be a civilization that deliberately sought to build underwater, perhaps as a sanctuary? More plausibly, it's suggested that these sites were once on dry land, coastal cities or sacred precincts, that were slowly or catastrophically submerged as sea levels rose. The idea of advanced coastal societies, flourishing thousands of years ago, only to be swallowed by the ocean, forces us to question the very cradle of human civilization. Some even whisper of technologies so advanced, so completely forgotten, that they allowed our ancestors to shape stone with an ease we can only dream of. What if our current understanding of ancient human capability is severely underestimated, limited only by the terrestrial evidence we've managed to unearth? How many more such secrets, such monuments, such entire lost worlds lie waiting in the vast, unexplored 95% of our oceans? This colossal submerged realm remains largely unmapped, its mysteries unchallenged. The stakes here are immense. If these submerged structures are confirmed to be artificial, dating back tens of thousands of years, it wouldn't just add a few lines to a history book. It would shatter the entire framework of human history as we understand it. It would mean that advanced civilization, with complex social structures, engineering prowess, and monumental architecture, existed at a time when we believe humanity was still primitive, struggling to survive in caves. It implies a sophistication and scale of human achievement that is simply incompatible with current archaeological paradigms. The prevailing historical narrative holds that human progress has been a gradual, upward trajectory, with clearly defined stages of development. We know when the first cities arose, when metallurgy began, when writing was invented. This established timeline is the bedrock of our understanding of who we are and where we came from. But the evidence emerging from the deep ocean presents a direct and undeniable challenge to this bedrock. If massive, precisely engineered structures were built thousands upon thousands of years before the accepted dawn of civilization, then the entire story requires a radical rewrite. It suggests that highly advanced societies may have risen and fallen, not once, but many times, leaving little trace on land, but an indelible mark on the forgotten seabeds. Could it be that what we consider ancient history is merely the most recent chapter of a much, much older story? A story of cycles of advancement and collapse, of knowledge gained and then catastrophically lost. This isn't about mere academic debate. This is about our identity, our understanding of human potential, and the true origins of our species. The implications ripple through every field of study, from anthropology to geology. It forces us to ask, what else have we overlooked? What else have we dismissed as myth when it might, in fact, be history? The invitation, then, is clear. It is an invitation to set aside preconceived notions, to quiet the voice of conventional wisdom, and to open our minds to the incredible possibilities hidden beneath the waves. It is an invitation to rethink what we truly know about the past, and to accept that the very foundations of human civilization might be far older, far more complex, and far more mysterious than we ever dared to imagine. As we delve deeper into the Indian Ocean's submerged riddles, we embark on a journey that could fundamentally alter our understanding of human origins. What secrets will the depths reveal next? The answers lie within the enigmatic ruins of places like the Gulf of Cambay. The depths of the Indian Ocean hold secrets far grander than we once imagined, stretching the very fabric of time. Beyond the general notion of submerged ruins, there are specific sites that challenge our understanding with such force. They demand a complete reevaluation. Consider a place often overlooked by history's mainstream, yet pulsating with an undeniable ancient energy: the Gulf of Cambay, off the western coast of India. In 2001, oceanographers conducting a routine survey of the seafloor for pollution levels stumbled upon something impossibly massive, something that didn't belong. Sonar scans, painting the ocean floor in unseen light, began to reveal highly geometric patterns and structures, lying at an astonishing depth of 120 feet. This was no natural reef or geological quirk. The shapes were too regular, too intentional. Initial reactions from many in the scientific community leaned toward skepticism. The idea of complex, organized structures at such depths was almost unfathomable. Perhaps they were unusual rock formations, or even but the sonar data, persistent and unwavering, told a different story. These were not random scattering. The patterns suggested rectilinear streets, what appeared to be city blocks and walls stretching for miles across the seafloor. Further surveys, employing more advanced side-scan sonar and sub-bottom profiling, began to sketch an even clearer picture. A sprawling city, intelligently laid out, buried beneath layers of sediment. The sheer scale and evident design hinted at an organized society, not random chance. Could these merely be coincidences of geology, or were we witnessing the ghost of a forgotten metropolis? The very existence of such a site at this depth presented a puzzle that history books were simply not equipped to solve. Encouraged by the sonar anomalies, marine archaeologists began to deploy remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, to capture visual evidence of these bewildering underwater structures. What they found, slowly emerging from the murky depths, were truly remarkable. Dive teams, venturing into the incredible pressure, brought back direct observations. Stone foundations, what looked like intricately carved architectural elements, and evidence of human habitation. Walls showed distinct mortar lines, blocks were cut with precision, and some even bore faint etchings that hinted at ancient craftsmanship. The geometric precision wasn't just in the layout, but in the individual components of the structures themselves. Pottery shards, meticulously crafted and decorated, were collected from within the ruins, alongside beads, sculptures, and even human bone fragments. For many archaeologists, the initial tendency was to categorize these finds within established frameworks. Perhaps these were remnants of a much later, known civilization, swept away by some localized event. Or perhaps the pottery and artifacts had simply drifted from coastal sites over centuries. The prevailing view maintained that advanced urbanization, as evidenced by these structures, simply did not exist at such an early period or in such a location. But a closer examination of the artifacts, coupled with their consistent placement within the discovered structures, painted a picture of deliberate habitation and a highly developed material culture. The pottery wasn't just crude, it displayed sophisticated firing techniques and decorative motifs. The carved wood, though brittle, showed the mark of skilled artisans. This wasn't merely debris. It was an archaeological site, undisturbed and preserved by the very sea that had claimed it. The sheer density of such finds, stretching across what seemed to be a 9-kilometer-long settlement, made any suggestion of accidental accumulation deeply improbable. The evidence spoke of a people who understood planning, architecture, and art. Then came the scientific findings that truly sent shockwaves through the academic world: carbon dating. Organic materials recovered directly from the site, pieces of wood, what appeared to be timber from a structure, and fragments of pottery that had integrated organic components, were carefully subjected to radiocarbon analysis. The results were nothing short of astonishing. The carbon dating consistently placed the age of these materials at around 9,500 years old, pushing the timeline of complex urban human civilization back by several millennia. This dating immediately ignited a firestorm of skepticism and controversy. The established historical narrative places the emergence of large-scale urban centers, like those of Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, much later, around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, to suggest a civilization with architectural prowess and material culture existed in the Gulf of Cambay nearly 10 millennia ago, at the very end of the last ice age, was seen by many as simply impossible. Critics argued for contamination of the samples, questioned the provenance of the organic finds, or suggested they were driftwood washed in from ancient forests, not integral parts of a city. The idea that such a sophisticated culture could predate even the earliest known periods of agriculture seemed to defy common sense. But the scientists involved stood by their methods. Multiple samples, taken from different locations within the site and analyzed by different laboratories, yielded remarkably consistent dates. The organic finds were embedded within the structures themselves, not simply lying on the surface, making the driftwood theory less plausible. The rigorous scientific process suggested that this was not an error, but a genuine discovery. If these dates held true, then the implications were staggering. A highly advanced, pre-Harappan or entirely unknown civilization had thrived in this region, at a time when humans were believed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers, not city builders. This would mean that the cradle of civilization, often attributed to the Fertile Crescent, might need a serious re-evaluation. As we delve deeper into such perplexing discoveries, it's impossible to ignore the echoes found in ancient traditions and lore. Across India, particularly in its southern regions, stories persist of great floods and lost land swallowed by the sea. The ancient Tamil Sangam literature, for instance, speaks of a vast submerged continent called Kumari Kandam, a land of advanced culture and knowledge that was lost to a devastating deluge. These tales, once dismissed as mere mythology or fanciful allegory, describe vibrant cities, wise rulers, and a rich civilization that vanished beneath the waves. Mainstream archaeology and history have long relegated such narratives to the realm of folklore, interesting cultural artifacts, but not historical fact. The scientific method demands tangible evidence, not just poetic verses or oral traditions passed down through generations. These stories, beautiful as they are, were simply not considered credible sources for constructing historical timelines or geological events. But when confronted with the tangible, geometric structures of the Gulf of Cambay, dating back to a period when global sea levels were dramatically rising, the ancient myths begin to resonate with an eerie accuracy. The descriptions of sophisticated cities and cataclysmic floods suddenly seem less like fiction and more like fragmented memories of a very real past. Could these be the very cities or echoes of the same civilization that the ancient texts speak of? What if the mythology is, in fact, historical record, imperfectly remembered and transmuted through generations? The possibility forces us to consider that these ancient peoples possessed a knowledge of their past, including cataclysmic events, that modern academia has largely ignored. The journey into the Gulf of Cambay has been fraught with contention from its very inception. The initial skepticism was fierce, rooted in a natural resistance to ideas that fundamentally challenge established historical paradigms. For years, debates raged over the authenticity of the finds, the reliability of the dating, and the very interpretation of the sonar data. Many within the academic establishment demanded more definitive proof, fearing a rush to embrace what they considered fringe theories that could undermine decades of painstaking research. The reluctance to allocate significant funding and resources to such a controversial site further complicated matters, creating a perception of an intellectual blockade. But the evidence, however slowly and controversially, continues to mount. Subsequent surveys, independent analyses, and the sheer consistency of findings from Cambay and other submerged sites around the world make it increasingly difficult to dismiss. The pattern of submerged, geometrically precise structures, accompanied by ancient artifacts and corroborated by carbon dating, is no longer an isolated anomaly. It is becoming a growing body of data that paints a consistent, albeit unsettling, picture. As the tide of evidence rises, it forces a critical re-examination of what we thought we knew about the origins of civilization itself. If such advanced societies existed at the dawn of the Holocene, then our entire historical narrative, from the development of agriculture to the rise of urban centers, needs to be profoundly rewritten. How much more evidence, lying silent beneath the waves, will it take to finally overcome this resistance and fully acknowledge the deep past that the ocean is so patiently revealing? The structures we've glimpsed beneath the waves, whether off the coast of Cambay or elsewhere in the vast Indian Ocean, force us to confront a fundamental question. How did they get there? The answer might lie not just in who built them, but in the very ground beneath our feet, or more accurately, the water above it. For millennia, the Earth was a very different place. You've seen the maps of our modern world, with stable coastlines and familiar landmasses. But what if those maps only tell a tiny fraction of a much larger, more dynamic story? Imagine a time when vast ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere, locking away trillions of tons of water. The mainstream view tells us that as the last ice age drew to a close, around 20,000 years ago, these glaciers began to melt, a process that steadily, gradually, raised global sea levels. This slow, predictable rise, it's believed, gently reshaped our planet, allowing human and animal life to adapt. But there's a growing problem with this picture of serene, gradual change. Geologists are uncovering compelling evidence that the end of the Ice Age was not a smooth, even process. Instead, it was punctuated by periods of incredibly rapid melt, massive bursts of water known as meltwater pulses. These weren't gentle tides creeping higher, but potentially dramatic, sudden inundations that could have raised sea levels by tens of meters in just a few centuries, perhaps even decades. Some researchers point to specific events, like Meltwater Pulse 1A, which occurred around 14,000 years ago, suggesting a global sea level rise of up to 20 meters in as little as 500 years. If true, this wasn't just a gradual reshaping. It was a wholesale rewriting of coastlines, a rapid swallowing of entire landscapes. What kind of impact would such sudden changes have had on any ancient civilizations living along those now submerged shores? Could it be that these rapid pulses didn't just alter the geography, but obliterated entire coastal cultures from the historical record? Some theories suggest that early human civilizations, much like our own, would have gravitated towards fertile coastal plains, estuaries, and river deltas. These were the prime locations for trade, fishing, and agriculture. If the sea level rose dramatically, not over thousands of years but within a few generations, these vibrant coastal communities, their cities and structures, would have been engulfed and lost, perhaps leaving only the kind of baffling submerged ruins we are now beginning to find. What if the story of mankind isn't one of slow, linear progression, but of repeated cycles of rise and fall, punctuated by catastrophic environmental shifts? Consider another perplexing anomaly, far from the Indian Ocean, yet deeply relevant to this discussion: the Bimini Road. Just off the coast of North Bimini in the Bahamas lies a submerged formation of incredibly uniform limestone blocks, stretching for hundreds of meters in a remarkably straight line. It appears almost like a paved road or a wall, resting just a few meters beneath the clear, turquoise waters. The orthodox scientific explanation maintains that these are nothing more than naturally occurring beach rock formations, weathered and fractured into geometric patterns by the relentless forces of the ocean. It's argued that geological processes can indeed create surprising regularities, and that the human eye is simply predisposed to see design where none exists. But many divers and researchers who have examined the Bimini Road firsthand find this explanation deeply unsatisfying. The blocks, some weighing many tons, are so consistently cut and placed, often with sharp angles and what appear to be supporting keystone pieces, that they seem to defy natural formation. The way they interlock and align with each other, creating segments that are perfectly straight or form precise right angles, raises profound questions. Some even suggest evidence of tool marks or quarrying techniques that are inexplicable by natural forces alone. If it were a natural formation, why is it so unique in its extreme regularity, unlike any other known beach rock in the region? This leads to a cascade of alternative theories. Could the Bimini Road be the remnant of an ancient harbor, a pathway, or even a ceremonial structure built by a previously unknown civilization? The most provocative theories link it to the prophecies of Edgar Cayce, who spoke of a lost civilization of Atlantis and predicted the discovery of its ruins near Bimini. Others suggest that if it is artificial, it points to a level of engineering sophistication in the ancient world that we are only beginning to comprehend. A capacity to quarry, transport, and place massive stones in a time we deem primitive, before they were submerged by rising sea levels. If the Bimini Road truly is man-made, what does it tell us about the kind of structures that could be hidden in shallower waters across the globe, just waiting to be recognized? The geological record itself holds further clues, painting a picture of dramatic change. Across continental shelves worldwide, geologists are discovering submerged river valleys, ancient shorelines, and even evidence of drowned forests. The mainstream explanation attributes these features to the gradual processes of erosion and deposition over millions of years, slowly shifting the land and sea boundaries, with the more recent submergence due to the well-understood post-glacial sea level rise. These are seen as expected outcomes of a dynamic Earth, where changes occur over vast, geological timescales. However, a closer look at some of these submerged landscapes reveals anomalies that challenge the purely gradualist view. In places, researchers find sedimentary layers that suggest rapid burial, not slow accumulation. There are signs of enormous, sudden reworking of sediments, consistent with catastrophic flood events rather than gentle inundation. For example, evidence of huge submarine landslides or anomalous gravel and boulder deposits, found far from their presumed origin points, hint at powerful, sudden water movements. Some geologists have found evidence of drowned settlements or archaeological sites, where artifacts appear to have been buried quickly by waterborne sediments, preserving them in a way that slow, erosional processes would not. Could these geological signatures be echoes of ancient megatsunamis, massive storm surges, or even further meltwater pulses that were far more violent and sudden than currently accepted? Theories range from asteroid impacts triggering vast tidal waves, to sudden tectonic shifts causing rapid land subsidence, to the complete collapse of glacial dams, unleashing torrents of water that reshaped entire coastlines in a matter of days or weeks. Some even suggest that the widespread ancient myths of a great flood, found in almost every culture across the world, from Sumerian epics to indigenous American legends, are not mere allegories, but historical memories of such truly catastrophic inundation events that profoundly impacted early human societies. Are we interpreting these subtle geological clues correctly? Or are we missing the larger story of sudden, cataclysmic shifts that literally erased parts of ancient history? This brings us to one of the greatest untapped archaeological frontiers on Earth, the continental shelves. You see, during the peak of the last ice age, when sea levels were over 120 meters lower than today, the vast areas of land now covered by the shallowest parts of our oceans were exposed. These were not barren wastes, but often fertile plains, teeming with life, where rivers flowed and ancient peoples settled. The mainstream archaeological focus has historically been on dry land, where sites are accessible and research methodologies are well established. Deep-sea archaeology, while growing, has largely concentrated on shipwrecks or specific, isolated finds, limited by its immense cost and technical difficulty. The sheer scale of the continental shelves, representing millions of square kilometers of previously habitable land, means that systematic exploration for ancient civilizations remains largely a dream. But if our understanding of past sea level rise is incomplete, if there were rapid, devastating inundation events, then the implications for continental shelf archaeology are staggering. It means that the largest potential trove of ancient human history, perhaps even the missing chapters of our earliest civilizations, lies buried and preserved beneath the waves. Theories suggest these shelves could hold entire lost cities, intricate settlements, and evidence of cultures far more advanced or widespread than we currently credit to the Stone Age. These submerged lands represent not just individual sites, but entire cultural landscapes, potentially preserving organic materials and structures in anoxic marine conditions, offering an unprecedented window into a lost world. The idea that early humans were simply nomadic hunter-gatherers might be true for the lands we now occupy. But what about the fertile coastal plains that vanished under the sea? What if these submerged continental shelves hold the key to a completely rewritten history of early human civilization? A story of advanced societies that thrived and perished in an environment profoundly different from our own. What new technologies, what forgotten knowledge, what revolutionary understanding of our past awaits us in these unexplored depths, challenging everything we thought we knew about the origins of human ingenuity and societal complexity? If we only explore the land we can see, are we choosing to remain blind to a forgotten world that silently calls to us from beneath the waves? The slow, creeping rise of the oceans, like a patient tide, gradually swallowed ancient coastlines. We have seen how entire settlements slipped beneath the waves, forcing us to rethink where civilization truly began. But what if the story is far grander and far more unsettling? What if not just cities but entire continents vanished? The very idea seems impossible. Our maps show us stable landmasses, moving slowly over millions of years. This is the bedrock of modern geology. The great plates of Earth's crust move, create mountains, open oceans. But they do not simply swallow vast tracts of land overnight, or even over centuries, not in any way we currently understand. This scientific view paints a picture of immense, slow, deliberate change. But here, the whispers of the past begin to challenge that understanding. Ancient myths across cultures speak of great lands that once were, territories now only in memory. Could these tales be more than mere fantasy? Could they be echoes of a time when the earth itself was far more dynamic, far more volatile than we presently conceive? Some researchers believe the geological record, while vast, might be incomplete, missing evidence of sudden, catastrophic events. They suggest our current models, focused on gradualism, might blind us to moments of rapid geological transformation. If even a fraction of these legends hold truth, then entire chapters of human history lie hidden, not just beneath rising seas, but beneath the very crust of the earth. What secrets could such lost worlds hold, and what would they reveal about our true origins? Deep in the ancient traditions of southern India and Sri Lanka, a specific and profoundly moving story persists. The Tamil people speak of a legendary continent, a vast, fertile land known as Kumari Kandam, which once stretched across the Indian Ocean. Their sacred texts, particularly the Sangam literature, dating back over 2,000 years, describe it with astonishing detail. They tell of glorious cities, a thriving civilization, and the flourishing of Tamil culture on a continent that connected present-day India to Australia and Madagascar. The literature recounts multiple deluges, devastating floods that progressively swallowed parts of Kumari Kandam, forcing its people northward. For generations, many scholars viewed these accounts as allegorical, poetic expressions, perhaps a localized flood event exaggerated by time, or a cultural memory of lost coastal lands, not a literal sunken continent. It's easy to dismiss such grand narratives as mere mythology, but the sheer volume and consistency of these ancient Tamil writings present a compelling challenge. They speak not just of a single flood, but of a series of catastrophic events, each diminishing the land. They describe the loss of vast territories, lands so expansive they housed entire mountain ranges and rivers now found only in legend. What if these texts are not fables, but a meticulous, albeit mythologized, historical record? What if the ancestors of the Tamil people truly witnessed the disappearance of their homeland beneath the waves? Could the submerged structures we've glimpsed off India's coast be tantalizing fragments of this forgotten world, not just isolated cities, but the very edges of a sunken continent? Some researchers suggest the persistence of these stories, combined with emerging underwater discoveries, demands a fresh look. They propose that while the vastness described might be an embellishment, the core memory of a substantial landmass in the Indian Ocean, subsequently submerged, could be rooted in a very real, ancient geological event. The precise timing of these events, described in the Sangam texts, suggests a period far earlier than currently accepted timelines for advanced civilization, pushing the boundaries of what we understand about ancient societies. How much of our history is buried, not just beneath sediment, but beneath the ocean of forgotten narratives, waiting for us to piece together the truth? For mainstream geology, the concept of a rapidly submerged continent presents a profound dilemma. Accepted wisdom of plate tectonics dictates that continental landmasses, made of lighter rock, float on the denser mantle. They move, collide, and separate over eons, but they do not simply plunge into the ocean depths quickly. Processes are agonizingly slow, measured in millimeters per year. This stable model underpins our understanding of Earth's past. But the Indian Ocean holds intriguing geological puzzles that challenge this rigid interpretation. Explorations of its floor have revealed curious features: submerged continental fragments, microcontinents like Mauritius, and oceanic plateaus that appear to be remnants of larger landmasses. Geologists have long studied them. However, what if these features represent more than just ancient continental rifting? What if some of these vast, submerged blocks, now thousands of feet underwater, were once exposed, habitable land? Could ancient land bridges, connecting what are now separate islands, have provided continuous pathways for early civilizations. Some speculative theories suggest that while standard plate tectonics explains long-term shifts, certain catastrophic events, perhaps massive earthquakes, rapid crustal thinning, or even impacts from celestial bodies, could trigger localized, rapid subsidence of large continental shelves or microcontinents. Imagine a scenario where a weakened crustal section suddenly gives way, dropping vast sections of land. Coupled with the dramatic post-ice-age sea level rise we've already discussed, a low-lying landmass could have been rapidly overwhelmed. This isn't about entire continents vanishing, but about large, habitable territories, even continental-sized land bridges, becoming submerged relatively quickly within human memory. Could these geological anomalies be the physical scars of the lost Kumari Kandam, or similar legendary lands? The idea of challenging conventional plate tectonics for rapid subsidence seems radical. Yet if such events occurred, they would fundamentally alter our understanding of Earth's history and its impact on early human civilizations. Are we limited by models that favor gradual change over sudden, powerful catastrophes? The idea of lost continents isn't confined to ancient folklore or geological curiosities. In the late 19th century, theosophy popularized Lemuria. This mystical continent, said to have existed in the Indian Ocean, was described as home to early human root races, a spiritual precursor to modern humanity. Theosophical texts painted vivid pictures of advanced civilizations on Lemuria, influencing New Age beliefs. Mainstream science, of course, largely dismisses Lemuria as pure fantasy, a product of spiritualist speculation and pseudoscience, lacking empirical evidence. It sits firmly outside academic geology or archaeology, seen as a diversion, for its descriptions often verge on the fantastical. Yet, the persistent global appeal of such stories begs a deeper question. Could the theosophists, in their search for spiritual truths, have tapped into something more profound than mere imagination? What if their concepts, however embellished, were distorted echoes of very real, ancient memories of landmasses now submerged? A provocative thought, that beneath layers of esoteric philosophy, there might lie a kernel of historical truth, a faint memory of a pre-cataclysmic world. The very name Lemuria was first coined by zoologist Philip Sclater in 1864 to explain the presence of lemurs across the Indian Ocean region, suggesting a former land bridge. While Sclater's geological model was superseded, the asterisk idea of a connecting landmass was born from scientific observation. This blend of early scientific speculation and later esoteric interpretation highlights a human fascination with lost worlds. This fascination echoes across other ancient oral traditions. Across the globe, from Aboriginal Dreamtime stories of rising seas to Polynesian myths of islands swallowed by angry gods, narratives of devastating floods and sudden geological changes are common. These describe world-altering events, profoundly reshaping coastlines. Mainstream scholarship attributes these widespread myths to localized flood events or shared human archetypes. Yet the striking similarities and sheer number of these deluge myths demand closer attention, particularly when viewed alongside growing evidence of vast submerged structures. What if these stories are, in fact, the true, though fragmented, historical memory of a highly dynamic Earth? What if ancient humanity witnessed periods of geological upheaval so profound that our current models for global stability are missing critical information? What if the true history of our world is far more turbulent, far more unpredictable than our textbooks currently suggest? And what if the Indian Ocean holds the key to unlocking that lost chapter? If the myths of submerged lands like Kumari Kandam hold even a whisper of truth, then the people who walked those ancient shores must have possessed a knowledge far beyond what our history books describe. For beneath the waves, the evidence of their construction defies everything we think we know about early civilization. Consider the megalithic structures now resting deep on the Indian Ocean floor. We are not just talking about simple stone piles. We are observing formations of impossibly massive blocks, some weighing hundreds of tons, meticulously cut and precisely placed. The sheer scale of these submerged constructions presents an anomaly. How could communities, ostensibly in a Stone Age or early Bronze Age, quarry, move, and construct with such gigantic materials, let alone do so in locations that are now hundreds of feet underwater? The mainstream view often suggests these structures, if ancient, were likely built when sea levels were far lower, by simple societies employing brute force, rollers, and ramps, methods similar to those used for terrestrial megaliths like Stonehenge or the pyramids. Once built, they were simply swallowed by the rising oceans. The thought of actively building at depth is dismissed as impossible for such early peoples. But there is a profound problem with this explanation. The precision of the cuts, the often interlocking nature of the blocks, and the sheer uniform finish seen on some of these underwater formations speak of an engineering capability that far exceeds rudimentary methods. Moreover, some evidence suggests structures were either modified or even begun when already partially or fully submerged, raising the question of how such complex work could be executed in an environment so hostile to human endeavor. No known conventional Stone Age or early Bronze Age tools could achieve such clean, straight cuts or drill such perfect holes, especially with the added complexity of working in a watery domain. What if the people of these lost civilizations possessed a technology, now forgotten, that allowed them to manipulate stone with an ease we can barely comprehend? Some researchers speculate about sophisticated acoustic levitation techniques, where specific sound frequencies could reduce the apparent weight of stones, allowing them to be moved by fewer individuals, or even float them into position. Others ponder whether these societies had a deep understanding of natural energy fields, perhaps even harnessing telluric currents or electromagnetic forces to aid in their impossible construction projects. Could it be that they understood principles of physics we are only now beginning to dimly rediscover? If such an advanced knowledge existed, then the monumental task of constructing these submerged cities shifts from impossible to merely extraordinary. The very act of placing these stones, sometimes with interlocking joints so tight a razor blade cannot pass through, points to an intellectual understanding of engineering and mathematics that is utterly astounding for their assumed era. This brings us to the mathematical and engineering genius implied by these submerged structures. We see alignments with cardinal directions, geometric patterns, and complex layouts that suggest not just practical building know-how, but a theoretical grasp of geometry, astronomy, and even structural mechanics. The coherent design of entire submerged complexes, not just individual buildings, paints a picture of architects and planners with a highly developed abstract intelligence. Mainstream archaeology typically posits a gradual development of these intellectual skills, progressing from practical observations to theoretical frameworks over millennia, culminating in the recognized great civilizations like Egypt or Sumer. These early cultures are seen as the innovators of geometry and astronomy through necessity, driven by agriculture and calendar keeping. But the sheer sophistication embedded in the foundations of these submerged sites contradicts this slow, linear progression. Some formations display symmetries and proportions that imply a knowledge of ratios and principles of design that seem far too advanced for a civilization supposedly struggling with basic survival. We are talking about structures that, if built on land today, would still be considered impressive engineering feats, requiring modern tools and extensive calculations. Could it be that these forgotten peoples possessed an intuitive, perhaps even esoteric, understanding of the natural world and its hidden laws? Theories suggest they might have understood sacred geometry, seeing the universe as an ordered system and replicating its patterns in their architecture? What if their mathematical knowledge was not just about counting or measuring, but about understanding the exactitude required to cut and shape multi-ton blocks, some with smooth, polished surfaces and precise angles, is a monumental challenge even in a dry environment. To imagine this process occurring underwater, or even at the very edge of an encroaching ocean, introduces a layer of complexity that pushes the boundaries of our accepted historical narrative. The orthodox view would argue that such precise cutting and shaping would have been done exclusively on dry land, using simple percussion and abrasion techniques, stone tools striking other stones, or rubbing with abrasive sands. Any underwater work would be crude at best, limited to minor repairs or simple placements. Yet, some underwater discoveries feature incredibly smooth surfaces, perfectly flat planes, and sharp corners that seem to defy the limitations of primitive tools. The sheer uniform finish on some submerged blocks is particularly perplexing. The idea of polishing and perfectly fitting massive stones underwater, or even in very shallow, turbulent waters, suggests a mastery over materials and an ingenuity in tool design that remains a complete mystery. Even if the initial cuts were made on land, the precision of their assembly, often without visible mortar, suggests a highly skilled manipulation of incredibly heavy components. This leads some independent researchers to propose radical alternative technologies. Perhaps they did not cut the stones in the way we understand it. Could they have used some form of geopolymer, a method of reconstituting rock from a slurry, shaping it while soft, then allowing it to harden? Or did they employ a forgotten method of softening stone, perhaps with a chemical process or an application of intense heat or vibration, making it pliable enough to shape before it rehardened? The legendary vitrified forts, seen in some ancient cultures on land, where stone appears to have been melted and fused, hints at technologies involving extreme temperatures that are not easily explained. What if a variation of this knowledge was applied to create the incredible precision we observe underwater? Finally, the sheer scale and consistency of these submerged construction projects point to an advanced level of planning and organization. These are not isolated anomalies, but often appear as sprawling complexes, with interconnected structures, roads, and defined areas. This suggests a society with a clear vision, capable of marshaling vast resources and coordinating complex labor over extended periods. Our accepted history typically attributes such large-scale, organized efforts to powerful empires or highly stratified societies with centralized leadership, often relying on vast workforces, sometimes enslaved, and sophisticated logistical systems. These traits usually appear much later in our timeline, accompanying the rise of established nation-states and urban centers. But the time frame suggested by the geological evidence for the submergence of these sites often places their creation far earlier than our known empires. It implies organized societies existing thousands of years before what we currently define as the dawn of civilization. Who were the architects and engineers who conceived of such monumental undertakings? Who were the leaders who could command the immense resources and labor required? Could these submerged sites be the remnants of a unified global culture, a network of highly advanced communities sharing a common technological and architectural blueprint? Some theorists suggest these societies might have had a different social structure, perhaps one driven by shared knowledge and spiritual objectives rather than hierarchical power. What if they developed sophisticated methods for collective action and resource management that allowed for such grand projects without the need for vast, forced labor armies? The existence of such immense, precisely built, and strategically located structures compels us to ask, what kind of society, with what kind of advanced planning and communal effort, could have accomplished such impossible feats so long ago, only to be swallowed by the silent depths of the ocean? The evidence we've explored, from the precise geometry of submerged cities to the sheer scale of their construction, points towards a past far more complex than our textbooks suggest. If these monumental structures, resting silently beneath the waves of the Indian Ocean, truly predate recorded history, then why aren't they commanding headlines and sparking a global reevaluation of human origins? The answer, perhaps, lies not in the depths of the ocean, but in the depths of human nature itself, in the unseen barriers of established thought. Consider the bedrock of scientific inquiry, a system built on meticulous peer review and a healthy dose of skepticism. When faced with archaeological findings that challenge millennia of accepted timelines, the mainstream response is often one of extreme caution. The anomaly here is the pervasive scientific conservatism, the almost impenetrable shield against radical new ideas. Mainstream archaeology, we are told, progresses incrementally, building upon established facts. Extraordinary claims it demands require extraordinary evidence. This rigorous process is presented as the very strength of science, ensuring that only validated truths become part of our collective understanding. It protects against hoaxes and misinterpretations. But there is a problem with this explanation. While caution is certainly a virtue, one must ask, at what point does caution transform into an unconscious bias? Does the very structure designed to safeguard knowledge inadvertently become a barrier to its expansion? Some researchers believe that this conservatism can lead to institutional inertia, a resistance to any discovery that might necessitate a complete rewriting of foundational theories. The comfort of the known, the security of established careers and academic reputations can become powerful forces. What if the extraordinary evidence demanded is not merely physical proof, but proof that fits within an existing, comfortable framework? Could the sheer disruptiveness of deeply ancient, advanced underwater structures be so profoundly unsettling that it triggers an instinctual defense mechanism within the academic establishment? Theories range from the mundane, a simple lack of interdisciplinary communication, to the more speculative, suggesting a subconscious fear of challenging a meticulously constructed narrative of human progress. Could it be that questioning our perceived linear journey from primitive to advanced is inherently threatening to our modern self-identity? If sophisticated civilizations existed 10,000 years ago, what does that say about our own progress? This resistance, then, is not necessarily malicious, but rather a deeply ingrained pattern of thought, a paradigm shift, challenge that most institutions are ill-equipped or unwilling to undertake. Does our current model of academic advancement unintentionally reward conformity over revolutionary insight, leaving profound discoveries like these adrift in a sea of skepticism? This brings us to another unseen barrier: the profound lack of funding for deep-sea archaeology, especially when focused on sites that hint at controversial timelines. Exploring the ocean floor is undeniably expensive, requiring specialized equipment, highly trained personnel, and vast logistical support. The mainstream explanation for limited funding is simple economics. Resources are finite, and priority is naturally given to projects with established historical links, or those that promise more immediate, less speculative returns. Terrestrial digs, it is argued, are often cheaper, more accessible, and build directly upon known historical periods. But there's a problem with this reasoning. If the potential discoveries in the Indian Ocean could fundamentally alter our understanding of human civilization, shouldn't such a profound quest warrant significant investment? Why do we spend billions on space exploration, looking for signs of life on other planets, while neglecting the possibility of rediscovering advanced life from our own planet's deep past? Some argue that the prohibitive cost is a convenient excuse, masking a deeper reluctance. Is it possible that the very act of seeking funding for such disruptive research is seen as an unwise career move, pushing against the tide of accepted academia? The politics of archaeological exploration are rarely straightforward. Grants often go to established teams working on conventional projects, reinforcing the status quo. Could it be that the financial gatekeepers, whether consciously or unconsciously, prefer to invest in research that confirms existing narratives rather than upends them? What if the economic hurdles are not merely practical, but also serve as a subtle form of control, ensuring that only safe discoveries are pursued? The resources exist to explore these depths, but the will to allocate them to such fringe investigations often does not. If the funding mechanisms themselves favor projects that do not challenge the historical timeline, how many world-altering secrets will remain locked beneath the waves, simply for want of a deep-sea submersible and a dedicated team? Sometimes, the resistance moves beyond mere conservatism or financial constraints, entering the realm of perceived deliberate suppression or a strong bias against anything labeled fringe. But there is a problem with this explanation. When similar dating methods or geological assessments are accepted for conventional sites, but fiercely questioned for anomalous ones, one must consider if there is a bias at play. Is it always pure objectivity, or does the challenge to an established worldview trigger a stronger, almost defensive reaction? Alternative theories suggest that a deeply ingrained bias against anything that deviates from the accepted narrative can lead to swift, and sometimes unfair, dismissal. The term fringe itself can be used to discredit findings before they are even fully examined, creating a powerful disincentive for researchers to pursue such lines of inquiry. Could it be that some in powerful positions within academia, perhaps unintentionally, protect a specific version of history, one that is comfortable, linear, and easy to teach? What if the potential for ridicule, for being labeled a pseudoscientist, is enough to deter even the most courageous researchers from bringing forth truly disruptive evidence? The alleged suppression might not be a shadowy cabal, but rather a more insidious, systemic pressure. It's the silent weight of institutional expectation, the politics of tenure and publication, that subtly guide researchers away from challenging established dogma. If a truly ancient, advanced civilization existed, what incentive is there for a system built on a different timeline to readily accept it? The unseen barrier, then, is a multifaceted one, woven from scientific caution, financial pragmatism, and the powerful, often unacknowledged human desire to maintain a familiar narrative. It is a resistance born not always of malice, but of the very human need for order and predictability. These submerged megaliths of the Indian Ocean, defiant in their ancient silence, present not only an archaeological puzzle but a profound challenge to how we, as a species, choose to remember our past. How many more discoveries must emerge from the deep before we collectively find the courage to confront the unseen barriers within our own minds? The politics of archaeological exploration often dictate what stories get told and what truths remain submerged. But what if the very act of dismissing these deep-sea discoveries is preventing us from seeing a much grander, more ancient picture of ourselves? This brings us to a profound, almost unsettling idea: that the story of human civilization, as we understand it, might be entirely incomplete. That the accepted timeline, charted meticulously by archaeologists on dry land, is missing entire chapters, entire epochs of advanced human endeavor now lost to the deep. Our conventional history paints a picture of humanity slowly rising from simple beginnings. For generations, history books have taught us a clear progression. Humanity emerged from simple hunter-gatherer bands, slowly developing agriculture, then settled communities. This led to the well-known Great River Valley civilizations: Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley. This linear march of progress, culminating in the complex societies we know today, forms the bedrock of our historical understanding. It's a comfortable narrative, a logical evolution from primitive to sophisticated. But the silent, submerged structures of the Indian Ocean, the impossibly massive stones laid out with intricate precision at unthinkable depths, present a direct challenge to this neat timeline. They whisper of a sophistication that simply shouldn't exist in the eras our history books describe. If these structures are indeed thousands of years older than any known civilization, they force us to consider a radical notion: that our entire understanding of civilization's origins, and even its true age, might be fundamentally flawed. Some researchers, looking at these widespread deep-sea anomalies, propose that we are not witnessing isolated incidents, but rather the remnants of a vast, interconnected global civilization, a network of advanced societies, perhaps linked by maritime routes now beneath the waves, spanning continents long before the Sumerians or Egyptians rose to prominence. Could it be that humanity achieved complex organization and advanced building techniques not just once, but multiple times, across different geographies, with the Indian Ocean holding the key to one of its most ancient manifestations? This perspective suggests a deeper, more complex human journey than we currently admit. This leads to another fascinating, if unsettling, hypothesis: the cyclical nature of human advancement. What if history is not a continuous, upward climb, but a repeating pattern of golden ages and cataclysms? Perhaps civilizations rise, flourish, reach astonishing technological and social heights, only to be wiped clean by forces of nature, by ice ages, by devastating floods. They leave behind only scattered, cryptic clues for future generations to stumble upon. The submerged cities become evidence of these forgotten cycles, silent monuments to peaks of human achievement that were simply reset by massive geological or climatic forces. This perspective suggests that our current civilization is merely one iteration in a much longer, grander, and more turbulent human story. We might be rediscovering lessons from a deep past. If this is the case, then many of the world's most enduring myths and legends take on a startling new significance. Tales of great floods, of lost lands, of advanced beings who shared knowledge with early humans, these are often dismissed as mere fantasy. But what if they are not fantasies at all, but rather the fragmented, allegorical memories of real events? The stories, passed down through millennia, could be echoes of advanced cultures swept away by rising seas, or the traumatic recounting of global catastrophes that profoundly reshaped the world. Could the gods or culture heroes of ancient myths simply be the last vestiges of highly advanced peoples, whose incredible knowledge seemed divine to a recovering, post-cataclysmic humanity? It asks us to look at our oldest stories not as fiction, but as historical records veiled in metaphor. And where would this lost history primarily reside? The sheer volume and depth of the submerged structures in the Indian Ocean suggest a compelling answer. While Mesopotamia and the Nile Valley are celebrated as cradles of civilization, some theories now posit that the shallow continental shelves of the Indian Ocean, particularly during periods of lower sea levels, could have harbored civilizations of unprecedented antiquity. Imagine a vast, fertile landmass now entirely submerged, a lost continent, not in the mythical sense of rapid sinking, but slowly, inexorably swallowed by the sea over thousands of years. This region, already rich in ancient trade routes and diverse cultures, could have been a true epicenter of early human complexity, predating even the oldest known land-based settlements. The warmth, the resources, the sheer expanse of now submerged coastal plains would have offered ideal conditions for early, sophisticated societies to thrive, leaving their colossal signatures etched into the seabed. The Indian Ocean, a forgotten cradle, hidden in plain sight. The implications of such discoveries are immense, almost overwhelming. If our past is far richer, far older, and far more complex than we ever imagined, it fundamentally alters our understanding of human identity. It challenges the very concept of primitive peoples, suggesting that deep within our genetic and cultural memory, we may carry the legacy of advanced ancestors. It opens up entirely new avenues for research, demanding a reprioritization of deep-sea archaeology and a willingness to transcend established academic boundaries. This isn't just about adding a few lines to a textbook. It's about rewriting the entire first chapter of humanity's story. It's about facing the possibility that we are not the first, nor perhaps even the most advanced iteration of civilization on this planet. Our present suddenly feels less unique. If these ancient stones truly speak of a forgotten legacy, a vast, submerged history waiting to be fully uncovered, then the question becomes, what other secrets lie hidden beneath the waves, waiting for us to listen? And what will that complete story tell us about who we truly are?